Shaquille O'Neal stood in the middle of the luxury car showroom, his towering presence unmistakable. He wasn't just another customer, he was a legend. Yet today, no one seemed to care. The polished floors reflected the gleaming cars, but the air inside was thick with judgment. "I'd like to see your newest model," Shaq said, his deep voice calm yet commanding. The salesman barely concealed his doubt as he scanned Shaq's casual hoodie and sneakers. "I'm afraid that one's reserved," he replied, his tone dripping with disinterest. Shaq raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Reserved, huh? For who?" Before the salesman could answer, the automatic doors slid open and a man in a tailored suit strolled in. The salesman's demeanor transformed instantly. "Excuse me," he said to Shaq, turning his full attention to the new arrival. Shaq stood silently, watching as the salesman greeted the other customer with genuine warmth. He didn't make a scene, didn't argue, he didn't need to. He simply turned and walked toward the exit. As he reached the door, he paused, glancing back at the showroom one last time. His expression hardened, his resolve clear. "They don't see it now," he muttered under his breath, "but they will." With that, Shaq stepped outside, the sting of rejection replaced by something stronger, a quiet determination that would change everything. What happened next would transform not just a business, but an entire way of thinking. Shaquille O'Neal walked into the luxury car showroom, his tall frame drawing immediate attention. The sunlight streamed through the glass walls, illuminating the polished floors and gleaming cars. But the pristine environment couldn't mask the subtle shift in the air when Shaq entered. He was dressed casually in a hoodie, athletic pants, and sneakers, an outfit that didn't match the usual clientele. But Shaq wasn't there to make an impression. He was there to buy a car. A young salesman approached, his smile polite but mechanical. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I assist you today?" "I'm interested in your latest model," Shaq said, his voice calm but direct. The salesman hesitated, his eyes scanning Shaq's attire. I'm afraid that model is fully reserved," he replied quickly. "But perhaps I can show you something more appropriate." Shaq raised an eyebrow but kept his composure. "No problem," he said evenly. "I'll just look around for now." As Shaq strolled through the showroom, his towering figure moved quietly among the sleek vehicles. The staff continued to glance his way, their expressions a mix of skepticism and dismissal. Then the automatic doors slid open again. A man in a tailored suit entered. His presence met with immediate attention. The same salesman who had dismissed Shaq transformed. His smile became genuine, his tone warm. "Welcome, sir," he said enthusiastically. Shaq paused to watch the interaction. The salesman eagerly showcased the newest models, offering refreshments and engaging with the man as if he were royalty. The contrast was undeniable. Shaq had seen it before, but it never lost its sting. This wasn't just about a car, it was about being judged by appearances. After a few more minutes, Shaq turned to leave. As he reached the doors, he glanced back at the showroom. The polished perfection of the space felt hollow now, the judgmental glances echoing in his mind. Standing outside, he paused, his expression thoughtful. "They've made a mistake," he muttered to himself. With quiet determination, Shaq walked away. This rejection wouldn't define him, it would fuel him. That evening, Shaquille O'Neal sat alone in his spacious living room, the city lights flickering through the large windows. His trophies lined the shelves, each one a symbol of his hard work and success. But tonight, they didn't hold his attention. Shaq leaned back in his chair, replaying the events at the showroom. The salesman's dismissive tone, the judgmental glances, and the stark difference in treatment compared to the man in the tailored suit. He wasn't angry. Shaq had faced prejudice before, but this time it felt different. "They judged me by what I wore, not by who I am," he thought, his jaw tightening. He took a sip of water, the glass steady in his large hands. A quiet resolve replaced the sting of rejection. This wasn't just about a car, it was about a system that needed change. Reaching for his phone, Shaq made a call. "John," he said firmly to his financial advisor, "I need you to gather all the financial reports and ownership details of that car showroom chain." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Are you planning to buy a car, Shaq?" John asked, curious. Shaq chuckled softly. "Not just a car. I'm buying the whole system." The decision wasn't impulsive. Shaq had been considering investing in the automotive industry for a while, but now it wasn't just about business. It was personal. He could already see the vision forming in his mind. A place where people were treated with respect, no matter their appearance. A place where no customer would ever feel the sting of judgment like he had today. This isn't about revenge, Shaq thought. It's about showing them, and the world, what respect really looks like. As the call ended, Shaq leaned back again, staring out at the city skyline. Tomorrow he would set his plan into motion. The rejection he faced today was about to spark a transformation that no one would see coming. The next morning, Shaquille O'Neal gathered his legal and financial team for a virtual meeting. The room buzzed with energy as his team reviewed the information he had requested overnight. The chain has been struggling for years, John began, sharing his findings. Sales have dropped, customer satisfaction ratings are low, and they've had trouble keeping up with competitors. Shaq leaned forward, his focus intense. Good. That gives us leverage, he said. The team exchanged uncertain glances. One of the lawyers spoke up hesitantly. Shaq, are you sure this is the right move? Buying a failing business is risky, especially in this market. Shaq nodded. I understand the risks. But this isn't just a business decision, it's personal. He paused, scanning the faces on his screen. Yesterday, I walked into that showroom as a customer. They judged me, dismissed me, all because of how I looked. This isn't just about fixing their numbers. It's about fixing their mindset. The room fell silent. The weight of Shaq's words lingered. This isn't revenge, Shaq continued, his tone firm but calm. This is about creating something better, a place where every customer is treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they are or what they wear. The skepticism in the room began to fade, replaced by curiosity and a sense of purpose. John broke the silence. All right, Shaq, if anyone can pull this off, it's you. What's the next step? Shaq's voice was steady. We negotiate. I want full control of the chain, and I want it fast. Over the next few days, Shaq's team worked tirelessly to finalize the deal. The negotiations were tough, but Shaq's determination never wavered. By the end of the week, the paperwork was signed. Shaquille O'Neal wasn't just a customer anymore. He was the owner of the entire chain. As Shaq reviewed the final documents in his office, he could already envision the transformation. He saw a showroom where no one was judged by their clothes or their background. A place where kindness and respect weren't just policies, they were the foundation. With the deal sealed, Shaq leaned back in his chair, a quiet smile playing on his face. The first step was complete. Now the real work would begin. A week later, the luxury car showroom hummed with its usual energy. Staff polished the already gleaming cars, straightened their tailored suits, and prepared for another day of catering to their select clientele. It was business as usual until a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot. The door opened and Shaquille O'Neal stepped out. But this wasn't the casually dressed man they had dismissed a week ago. Today, Shaq wore a perfectly tailored black suit, a sharp tie, and polished leather shoes that gleamed in the morning light. His commanding presence drew every gaze as he strode confidently through the showroom doors. The receptionist froze, recognition flickering across her face. The salesman from last week stood nearby, his face going pale as he realized who had returned. Good morning, Shaq said, his deep voice calm but purposeful. Do you remember me? The salesman stammered, struggling to compose himself. Yes, sir. Of course. I'm sorry if there was any misunderstanding before. Shaq raised a hand, silencing him gently but firmly. It's all right, he said, his tone steady. I'm not here to buy a car today. The room grew still. Employees and customers turned to watch as Shaq walked to the center of the showroom, his voice resonating with quiet authority. I'm here to buy the entire chain. Whispers rippled through the showroom, disbelief spreading like wildfire. The manager, alerted by the commotion, rushed out of his office, his expression a mix of confusion and unease. Shaq turned to face the manager, his tone addressing not just him, but everyone in the room. Last week I came here as a customer, and your staff judged me, not because you didn't have the car I wanted, but because they assumed I didn't belong. The manager opened his mouth to respond, but Shaq stopped him with a raised hand. There's no need for an apology, he said firmly. I didn't come here for excuses. I came here for change. Shaq stepped onto the central display platform, where the showroom's most luxurious car gleamed under the lights. He turned to face the employees and customers who had gathered, his voice filled with conviction. From this day forward, he began, I am the new owner of this chain of showrooms, and I promise you this, no one, absolutely no one, will ever be judged by their appearance, their clothing, or the color of their skin here again. The room was silent, the weight of Shaq's words settling over everyone. Some employees looked shocked, others hopeful. The young salesman who had dismissed Shaq before shifted uncomfortably, his face red with shame. I'm not doing this to settle a score, Shaq continued, his tone softening but remaining strong. I'm doing this because respect isn't a privilege, it's a right, and that applies to every customer and every employee in this room. The staff exchanged uncertain glances, their expressions a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Shaq stepped down from the platform, walking through the room with deliberate steps. This isn't just about selling cars, he said. It's about building trust. It's about creating fairness. And it's about making sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else. As Shaq reached the exit, he paused and turned back to face the room one last time. Change starts now, he said firmly, and it starts with all of you. The air was charged with energy as Shaq left the showroom, leaving the staff to process what had just happened. For Shaq, this was only the beginning. The real transformation was yet to come. The next morning, Shaquille O'Neal called a meeting with the showroom's entire staff. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy as employees filed in, unsure of what to expect. At the head of the table, Shaq stood tall, his calm demeanor commanding attention. Once everyone was seated, Shaq addressed the room, his voice steady but firm. Do you know why I bought this chain? He asked, his gaze sweeping over the group. The manager, still visibly uneasy, spoke first. We assumed it was for business potential. Shaq shook his head. No, he said firmly. I bought it because this place has the potential to be more than a business. It can be a symbol of respect, fairness, and dignity. But to get there, things need to change, starting now. The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Shaq turned his attention to the young salesman who had dismissed him the week before. The man shifted nervously in his seat, unable to meet Shaq's gaze. Yesterday, you judged me based on how I looked, Shaq began, his tone steady but direct. Do you think that was fair? The salesman hesitated, then shook his head. No, sir, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't fair. I made a mistake. Shaq nodded, his expression softening slightly. You're right. It was a mistake. But here's the real question. Are you ready to learn from it? Because I don't just want apologies. I want to see growth. The salesman looked up, his voice trembling. Yes, sir, I am. Shaq turned back to the rest of the staff, his voice carrying the weight of his conviction. Starting today, every employee here will participate in a training program. This isn't just about selling cars. It's about how we treat people. You'll learn to respect every customer who walks through those doors, no matter how they look or where they come from. Some employees exchanged uncertain glances, their skepticism clear. One senior staff member finally spoke up. Why change something that's worked for so long? Shaq met his gaze directly. Because what worked before wasn't good enough. Not for you, and certainly not for our customers. Change is hard, but it's necessary if we want to be better. Shaq's tone softened as he continued. This isn't about punishment. It's about making all of us better. I don't want anyone, whether it's a customer or one of you, to feel like they're less than anyone else. Finally, Shaq offered an ultimatum. I believe in second chances, he said, his voice steady. But second chances only matter if you're willing to take them. If anyone here doesn't agree with this vision, you're free to walk away. There's no obligation to stay. For a moment, the room was silent. Some employees looked down, deep in thought. But most, including the young salesman, nodded in agreement. As Shaq turned to leave, he paused at the door and looked back. Remember, he said, real change doesn't come from one person alone. It has to come from all of us. If we want to create a place where everyone feels welcome, that responsibility starts with each one of you. The transformation of the showroom began almost immediately. Weekly training sessions were introduced, focusing on breaking unconscious biases and redefining customer service. Employees from every level of the organization were required to attend. At first, the changes weren't easy. Some senior staff members resisted. Why fix something that's been working for years? One veteran employee asked during a training session. Shaq, who made it a point to attend the first few sessions personally, responded with quiet determination. Because what worked before didn't work for everyone, he said. And if it's not good enough for our customers, it's not good enough for us. Weeks into the training, the first signs of progress began to emerge. One afternoon, a single mother walked into the showroom, holding her young son's hand. Her coat was worn, her shoes showed years of use, and her nervous glance suggested she wasn't used to spaces like this. To some, she might not have seemed like an ideal customer. But this time, things were different. A new employee, fresh from training, approached her with a warm smile. "Hi there," he said, his tone genuine. "Welcome to our showroom. How can we help you today?" The woman hesitated, still unsure of how she would be treated. "I'm not ready to buy just yet," she admitted. "I just wanted to see what options might work for us in the future." The employee didn't dismiss her or rush through the interaction. Instead, he spent time showing her around, patiently answering her questions without a trace of judgment. Her son's eyes widened as he looked at the shiny cars, a smile spreading across his face. When the visit ended, the little boy turned back to the employee, his grin radiant. "Thank you, sir," he said. "This is the best day ever." From a distance, Shaq watched the interaction unfold. A soft smile crept across his face. This was the vision he had imagined, a place where everyone, no matter their circumstances, felt welcome and valued. Later that day, Shaq called the employee into his office. "I wanted to thank you," Shaq said, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. "What you did today wasn't just about helping a customer. It was about building trust. That's the kind of change we're creating here." The employee nodded, visibly moved. "Thank you, Mr. O'Neal," he said. "I'm proud to be part of this." Shaq leaned back in his chair after the conversation, reflecting on how far they had come. The changes were small but meaningful, the first steps in turning his vision into reality. The ripple effects of Shaquille O'Neal's changes began to spread far beyond the showroom. Customers started to notice the difference almost immediately. The staff's warm smiles, genuine greetings, and attentive service created an atmosphere that felt entirely new. Word of mouth traveled quickly. A father who purchased a car for his family said, tears in his eyes, "Thank you for not judging me. This means more than you know." Stories like his began to circulate, each one a testament to the power of respect and fairness. Even those who had once resisted the change started to feel its impact. One senior employee who had openly doubted Shaq's vision approached him after a training session. "At first, I thought this was just a publicity stunt," the man admitted. "But now I see it's real. Thank you for showing us a better way." Shaq smiled, his voice calm but encouraging. "Change isn't easy," he said, "but it's worth it when you see the difference it makes in people's lives." The transformation of the showroom began to inspire others in the community. One day, a local restaurant owner visited Shaq in his office. "What you've done here has made me rethink how I run my business," he said. "I realize I need to train my staff to treat every customer with the same respect you've shown here." Shaq nodded, his words filled with hope. Kindness and respect aren't just good for business. They're good for people. And when you start with that, everything else falls into place. The changes extended beyond customer interactions. Shaq partnered with local community organizations to host workshops on fairness, communication, and inclusivity. Employees and customers were invited to participate, fostering understanding and empathy. At one workshop, Shaq spoke to a group of teenagers from underserved neighborhoods. "Life isn't always fair," he told them, his voice steady and sincere. "But your value isn't determined by how others see you. It's defined by how you see yourself and how you treat those around you." A young boy raised his hand, his voice trembling with curiosity. "Mr. Shaq, how can I do something as big as what you've done?" Shaq crouched down to meet the boy's gaze, his smile warm. "You don't have to start big," he said. "Start with kindness, one person, one moment at a time. Let it grow from there. That's how we change the world together." Meanwhile, the employees at the showroom continued to evolve. One customer who had been dismissed in the past returned, nervous but hopeful. This time, he was greeted warmly and treated with professionalism. Overwhelmed, he shared his experience. "I never thought I'd come back here, but today I didn't just find the car I needed. I felt respected. This place is different now, and it shows." For Shaq, these moments were proof that his vision was taking root. He knew the transformation wasn't complete. Real change took time, but the seeds of progress were growing and the results were undeniable. Shaquille O'Neal stood in the middle of the transformed showroom, watching as a modestly dressed family explored the cars with wide-eyed excitement. A staff member greeted them warmly, guiding them through the options with genuine care. It was a scene that mirrored what Shaq had imagined from the very beginning. His mind drifted back to the day he had first walked into this very showroom, the judgmental glances, the dismissive tone of the salesman, and the quiet sting of rejection. But today, the air felt different. The atmosphere was one of inclusion, trust, and kindness, a testament to how far they had come. Later, as Shaq wrapped up his day, a receptionist approached him with a handwritten note from a customer. He unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the heartfelt words. "Thank you for making this a place where I feel like I belong. The kindness here has restored my faith in humanity." Shaq held the note for a moment, his heart full. This wasn't just about cars or sales figures. It was about people, about creating a space where everyone felt valued. Looking into the camera for a message to viewers, Shaq spoke directly. "This story isn't just about me," he began, his tone warm and sincere. "It's about all of us. Every day we have the chance to impact someone's life with a smile, a kind word, or an act of respect. Never underestimate how far those small moments can go." He paused, his voice filled with conviction. "If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's spread more messages like this and create a world where everyone feels valued, one act of kindness at a time." As the camera faded to black, Shaq smiled, the note still in his hand. His journey had started with rejection but ended with transformation. Not just for a business, but for the countless lives it touched.